Why don't we go ahead and kick the meeting off here? Want to say good evening to everybody who's joined us, and welcome to any guests and new members. If you're a guest, shout out, let us know who you are and where you are. Al, are you a guest this time?
Talking to me, Al, here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm up here in Percy, and it's been raining really hard.
Oh
We're
my.
watching Channel 6 with a few tornadoes on either side of us.
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome to the meeting. Anybody else? Carol or Dudley, are you a guest this evening, or are you?
No, I'm a bona fide member.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, welcome. We've gained so many new members doing these Zoom meetings that I don't even know half the folks anymore. Gives my brain a struggle trying to keep track.
I was going to say that's not the reason you don't know. It's a function of
Be
AGE.
careful, Don, or I'll have to talk about something.
It's a function of AGE, baby.
No. I was pretty good when we were all meeting.
Tom,
Yeah, Jack.
are we going to be able to get back into the high school for our meetings or not?
Well, amazing you asked that question, because that was just what I was going to start talking about.
Well, it's been on my mind.
Well, the answer to the question is that the reason we're not at the high school tonight is because Heather told us that before the first day of school, they advised her that they were not going to allow guests in the school, and everybody was going to have to be masked. And there was a lot of confusion over what they were actually going to do. So as a result, she's recommended that we move the meeting to a Zoom meeting, which we have done. And at this point, it does not appear that they're going to loosen things up enough that we can return to the school for some time. Now, the October meeting was scheduled to be a remote demonstration anyway with Carol Hall. The November meeting, we will just have to wait and see where the COVID situation is and what the policies are at the school before we decide whether we'll meet there or not. But no matter whether we meet at the school or not, we're going to try to continue to have hybrid meetings. We've done a lot of testing with the equipment, and I think we've got a pretty good setup now to where you can see the demonstrators, and at the same time, if you're on Zoom, you can ask questions and they'll be able to hear what you're asking. And likewise, you'll be able to hear what the demonstrator is saying. So I'm looking forward to that situation, because I think it's going to prove to be beneficial not only to the folks that are part of the chapter and maybe can't attend, but for the people who are attending our meetings from distant cities. So we'll have to see. What was that, Joe?
I was going to say, given the weather tonight, I'm glad we're meeting virtually.
Yeah. Yes.
The last thing I'd want to do is drive 45 minutes in this weather, one
Right.
way, and then 45 minutes home. This is,
Yeah.
this is ideal, I think.
Yes, yeah, it certainly did. Joe, why don't you quickly give everybody an update on, what you've done as far as the holiday party, and then we'll put the caveat around that.
Oh, well, there's not a lot to tell. That we've reserved the venue, our traditional venue, Blue Ball Barn, where we, other than last year, we met like 7 or 8 years in a row there there in Wilmington. So we've got it reserved for December, the first Saturday in December. It's either the 3rd or the 4th. I don't remember at the moment. But of course, depending on how things are in December, hopefully we'll be able to have our luncheon there in person. If not, we'll have to do a virtual meeting like we did last year with everything online.
Good, okay. So we're hoping, but we're gonna play it cautious, and if it doesn't work out, we'll be prepared to hold it as a virtual get together. For the folks who are new members or any of the old members, if you don't happen to currently have a name tag, Frederick McFarland is the man who has been doing our name tags. And if you need to get in touch with Fred, you can either get in touch with him directly or through any of the officers. And we'll get the name tag set up for you. They're $10. Right now we have name tags with a magnet on the back of them to fit on your pocket. So should work out real well. Coming up in October, we're going to be looking for nominations and volunteers for 3 of our chapter officers. Our vice president, our program director, and our safety director are all up this year. And so if you're interested in getting involved with the chapter and contributing some of your energy and expertise, we're certainly looking for folks to step up and join us. Couple of things I wanted to throw out is that we've got some opportunities that have come in that I would like to toss out on the table, so to speak. And that is, there's a lady in New York who has reached out to us asking if one of us could turn a bowl table. She's talking about a bowl with a flat surface and about 1.5 inch high sides and 3 spindle legs. I have a diagram of it. Let me see if I can share my screen and show it to you. Let's see, where in the heck did I put it? Here we are. Okay, let's share the screen. Come on.
How did she pick us, Tom?
Website. That's roughly what she wants. And the reason is that she collects spinning tops. This is about, the idea is about 12 inches in diameter and about 12 inches tall. And what she wants to do is to be able to spin spinning tops on that table.
So the table is flat inside, not scooped at all.
Correct.
With
Roughly,
just the sides turned up.
Yes.
So she just wants a tray with legs, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I thought she wanted something when I saw that 3 feet in diameter, and I was going to say maybe Chris had a piece of wood and I could swing it over the end of the lathe.
She would like
inch.
She would like it all in walnut. And a semi-gloss finish, not bright, but semi-gloss.
Right. Did she say how high she wants the rim?
No, something on the order of what you see there, which is about 1.5 inches to 2 inches.
Yeah.
What diameter does she want it, Tom?
11 to 12 inches.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's pretty small.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is. It is. I was let down when I heard the 11 or 12 inches.
Yeah, that's that's basically a small tray with legs on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
Are the
did, we
legs
did not
turned?
talk, we did not talk about compensation. Whoever would like to do it, is welcome to negotiate with her on that. She just couldn't find a resource, to do it and found our website and sent me an
Okay.
email basically asking if there was somebody who was interested in.
Well,
taking
we have a
it on.
bunch of references to spinning tops. So I'm sure that's how she ended up with us.
yeah.
That could be.
How tall
been-
is she? How tall are those legs supposed to be?
10 inches, they look like if you scale it off the 12.
Yeah. And she likes the style that's on this picture, but she's willing to, consider something fancier or, of a different shape
Yeah.
if that's what you feel comfortable offering.
Are the legs turned?
Yes.
They look a little fragile, depending on,
Well, these do, and that's
Depending
why I
on-
say,
yeah,
I'm
depending on
sure
who's,
she's willing to negotiate over
if-
the legs.
if it's 4 grandkids using it or something, it doesn't look like it would, those legs would survive.
Well, she didn't say anything about kids, but
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
that ultimately may be the case.
I don't,
You
yeah,
you could basically make like a milk stool with
Right.
instead, but with edge, with a rim,
Right.
basically, like,
Right.
yeah. So you could do a little better on the legs. You could make them a little more, well,
Make-
depending on, I mean, if she wants them just straight like that, but yeah.
Make them 2
robust.
by 4s.
What's that?
I said, make them 2 by 4s.
Yeah. So anyway, if you either let me know by chat tonight, or you can send me an email and let me know, and we'll get you hooked up with her. Joe, do you want to talk about that request from Cindy about,
Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I will just share my screen here. We got a note from, can everyone see this? We got a note from someone down in, a woman named Cindy down in Milton here in Delaware. They're having a festival, first annual Unified Delaware Festival in October, October 23rd. And they wanted to know if anyone would want to set up a booth there. And the information is right here on the screen. It's just, I don't know if any of us actually do festivals. I mean, I think some of us sell things, but I don't know if any of us that actually do the festival circuit. But I told her I would put this up, and if anyone's interested, you can either jot down the information here or send me an email and I'll send this to you.
yeah,
With, basically just contact her, and but it's $50 if you want to have a booth there.
So
Somebody
it would
was
be a
asking-
club show and tell kind of thing.
No, I think this is more, they want people to like have a vendor.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I mean,
More of a
I don't
craft
think,
show.
yeah, exactly. It's more like
Yeah.
a craft show. I mean, they said they're going to have, there's going to be an antique car show there, and she's actually sent me a flyer, but I don't have the flyer up here. I don't have the flyer. I don't know what I did with the flyer. Sorry. She did send me a flyer. Maybe I could find it. Well, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but they're going to have other activities there, like there's going to be a car show and a number of other activities, along with the vendors, the craft show. So, I mean, we're not planning on going down as a chapter,
Right, right.
in that sense. But I just, if anyone's interested, if anyone's on the, doing festivals, there's an opportunity. This is, again, it's going to be it's the first annual festival. So I don't know what the attendance is going to be like. Also, they're charging an admission.
Joe, I had to mute you. Hold on.
I got it. You got it?
Yeah. you
Okay,
got
I was just saying, so this is their first time they're doing this, and also they're charging people at admission just to get in. So I don't know what their turnout's going to be like. And Milton's a pretty small town. So just, I mean, I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but, just, these are the facts. You can contact her for more information if you like.
Good, okay. Next, we got a request through Heather. One of the assistant principals, I think at her school, has a couple of locust trees. One of them's down and the other one's to the left there is kind of leaning over. He's going to take that one down too. He was interested in offering the locust if anybody was interested in it. As you can see, it's about 10 inches in diameter or so. And obviously this one's split. The one on the left is not. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know so we can get hooked up. I'm thinking, I believe, let me check here real quick. He's in Hocussin, Delaware, if that helps. Yeah. So
Speaking of trees, Tom, maybe we should also mention this weekend the Chinese
oh
tune
yes, please
tree
do.
is coming. Yeah.
Is Eric still here?
Well, I can just, well,
Yeah.
Eric was the lead on that, but it's at St. Joseph's University, and probably going to be this Saturday when we go to pick it up. And it's a pretty massive tree.
So the
90 foot
tree is
tall.
scheduled to come down tomorrow. They're going to move it to the parking lot on Friday. There is so much interest that the university decided they're going to make a, I don't know, conference table. So they're going to take a bunch of it, but it's 34 inches in diameter, almost the entire length up. So it's a big tree, and Joe, they're going to cut you your 50-inch piece.
Yeah, could you ask
right.
them not to, when they cut it, make sure it's like at least not right at the base.
No, the
what I mean?
base was actually rotted. That's why the tree's
Oh,
coming
good.
down.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you don't want it. You don't want it like real close.
You asked
to
for
the
50
base.
inches. You're going to get
Yep.
30 odd diameter inches anyway, 50 inches long. So
that's great.
You asked, you're getting.
I could take 2 of those.
So we got right now about 10 people showing up on Saturday. So
Wow.
and they also have a Chinese Empress tree. If anybody else that's coming down, it's about 10 inches in diameter. And they've got still some locust, and you'll see in the show and tell I've got an Evodia. It's also called Korean BB tree bowl completed, as I'm giving to the young lady that's offering these trees up for us. It's really pretty. They've got a lot of that still. They've got, I don't know, a whole bunch of like 20 or 30 pieces that are spalted. So I'm interested in getting a couple of my spalted pieces that I've already collected turned. Anyway, it's a future availability of rare trees. They have a little over 600 species at the Arboretum. So the other clubs that they've offered it to have not really shown up, and we've been showing up. So they're going to continue offering trees to us as they take them down.
So Eric, the Chinese tune tree, I researched.
Tune tree, right?
Yeah, I researched that online a little bit. So it's mahogany, right? I saw
Another name is called Chinese mahogany. It's a maroonish red tree. I think I sent out a bunch of people.
But I'm talking about the species.
Sample that I have.
The species is actually a mahogany, right?
No, not at all. It's his nickname. One of the common names is called Chinese mahogany.
Oh, because I saw on Wikipedia that it's actually a true mahogany. It's like, that's actually what they said.
Okay. Anyway, there's 3 mahoganies, 2 in Honduras and 1 in Africa.
Interesting. So, okay. But the properties, I guess the properties are similar to mahogany?
Yes. And that's why one reason it's called, and the color is a little darker than mahogany, but it's still Again, one of its common names is Chinese mahogany.
You know what the density's like?
The piece I had a couple of years ago, medium, again, like mahogany.
Okay.
There's a tree that grows in the south called a Chinaberry tree.
Not
it's-
related at all, and much, much darker in the color of the wood.
But the Chinaberry tree is a trash tree. I mean, once you get one, you got them forever. But that is a mahogany also. It's beautiful.
Again, like a mahogany, there are only 3 true mahogany species that are in that genus. So there's a lot of them that look like it, feel like it, turn like it, but they're not true mahoganies. So.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
So have we got any other announcements? Anybody?
When the collection of the tree comes down, and again, it's a really large tree. My understanding is the university's been there since the 1800s. So a lot of these trees that are coming down for this parking lot, or because they're, in this case, dying, they're big. So there's plenty of wood to go around.
Good.
Hey, Tom. So Del Val will have our presentation on September 14. We're going to have Jeff Salter. He's pretty amazing. So I hope you guys have seen our newsletter and will consider attending that.
Good. Okay. What's the date again?
His name is Jeff Salter.
The date.
The date is September 14th,
Okay.
Tuesday. It's hard to find his website, but it's in the newsletter. There's a link.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thanks. Anybody else? All righty. So I'm going to jump into show and tell. And when I do, when yours comes up, if you'll talk about it, and then we'll tell me when to change the pictures, because that way I can keep it moving. Let me bring up show and tell. And go to, where is, come on. All right, share screen. All right, okay. Share. From the beginning. Okay, all right. So, Pat Wisniewski. Pat, are you there?
I'm sorry, I was still muted. I'm an AAW member. I finally joined up. I was here a few months ago for one meeting. And in the meantime, I don't know if anyone knows Bill Rowe, R-O-W-E, in Wilmington, North Wilmington. He did a little woodworking and turning, and he and his wife are moving to Richmond to be close to children as they get older and decline. And he was a bit upset that he had to sell his equipment and his wood supply. There was a cherry tree that grew in their yard for over 50 years that he had milled up. And I went up to look at it on a Wednesday, and I said, well, I'd be interested in buying it from him. I probably paid too much. I was feeling bad for him losing everything. And he had not stickered it too well, so it has a lot of checks and a lot of skewed pieces and all. But I took a chunk of it back with me, went up the next Saturday to pick it up, and I brought them this bowl so that, as I told them, they could put their keys in it inside their new place in Richmond to remember their previous home and their tree. And it's just a simple 8-inch bowl, about 1.5 inches tall. I just wanted it to be an unusual shape, and you can change the picture anytime you want there, Tom. It had a little bit of interesting color and grain to it. And last picture just shows my maker mark that our children in Thailand sent me for Father's Day.
Yeah,
don't know.
we only have two pictures.
Oh,
that-
okay. I'm sorry. I
You know,
thought-
that's okay. I probably didn't dig far enough, but we got into show and tells that lasted too long with more than a couple of pictures.
I see.
So,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Eric,
There, it helps that I unmute. For those that don't know, A, I collect wood. B, I have a bottle stopper collection and I have a lidded box collection. This is part of the lidded box collection. This is number, I think, 210. It's a hairy she oak from Australia, a piece I got from a friend of mine in Australia who does sell wood. So anybody else is interested in picking up Australian woods really cheap, although you pay through the nose for mailing, let me know. Really pretty wood. You can see the sapwood on the lighter color. So I was really happy to be able to get some of the sapwood and heartwood in the same piece. Next slide. So also from the same guy, I got some Australian black bean, kind of an interesting wood. Nothing exciting, but again, it's just another species that I didn't have before. So next slide. So up to 219, I believe, the lidded boxes. So I got about 900 more to go. It'll be a while. Picked up this piece of Laos ironwood, kind of pretty. Next slide. It's kind of a burl piece, so it's really really dense. And I collect ironwoods. So my goal is to get all 267 of them. I've got about half of them already.
what kind of finish are you putting on them?
Same as always, the Minwax polyurethane with a wax coating on it after the first polyurethane first coat. And then I put wax on it. And then I melt the wax with another coat of polyurethane and then let it dry for about a half hour or more, depending on the humidity level outside, and then wipe it down. So polyurethane and wax.
Is it to satin, Eric?
No, it's a semi-gloss.
Semi-gloss.
If you're interested, I have or at least I did, have a slideshow up on the website that showed how to apply it and everything else. If anybody else is interested and you can't find it, send me an email and I'll send you my slideshow on discussing the finish.
What is the diameter of your boxes?
So I normally make a cube 3 inches by 3 inches. So it's 3 inches in diameter, 3 inches tall.
Thank you.
I'm trying to be consistent. So since it's a collection, you'll see in a minute I went out and visited my daughter and family out in the Midwest. And when I was there, she mentioned that she had a little 5-inch bowl that was kind of small and about 2 inches in height. And she really wanted some more because her family uses them frequently. So I went ahead and when I came back, she said she wanted 5 more. So I went and made 5 of them. And this is one I pulled out, but it was 4 inches thick. And I'm like, well, it's really a pretty wood. So rather than cut it in half, I decided to make the bowl and my wife has claimed it. So Pau-a-Ferro, also called Brazilian teak, I believe, as its rather common name. Oh, again, the 5 bowls I mentioned. So she wanted 5 bowls, 4.5, 5 inches in diameter. So I went and just arbitrarily selected some species and turned bowls. Go ahead, next slide.
What's the middle one? What's the middle
Well,
one?
we'll go through all of them. That was the more interesting one.
Don't think it registered the extra pictures, so.
I thought I did, but anyway.
You put them in, but the system doesn't make up the slides.
Oh, all right.
So you can talk
back
to them here.
So the bottom one that you just saw a minute ago is zebra wood. The next one up is a spalted piece of carrot wood. And the middle one is curly Brazilian rosewood that I picked up from a gentleman who I picked up his entire wood collection. And he had spent like 80 years collecting wood. So it was a big collection. Next one up is Clario walnut. And then the last one is sateen, curly sateen. But the curly Brazilian walnut, I mean, Brazilian rosewood, you just almost never see it as curly. It was a really unique piece. So still have a little left.
Yeah.
So again, the zebra wood. Oh, yeah. So we're there. So here's the
Oh, okay.
Clario.
Okay.
Again, really nice piece of, oh, I'm sorry. This is the piece I got from John Bassina. He advertised out a vacuum machine. And since it was really cheap, I went and picked it up. And since he's moving, he was getting rid of some wood. And so I was more than happy to take this big piece of Clario walnut off his hands as a throw-in to purchasing his vacuum truck. So the wife has also claimed this one. She really liked it because a lot of curl to it. So in my endeavors, the wife bugged me that she said when I had some time on my hands, this piece I made, I don't know, 20 something years ago. The black is Macassar ebony and the brown is briar burl. I really like briar burl, and when I lived in Massachusetts, the guy next to me that had a whole bunch of it. So I picked up a whole bunch of it, but it's kind of ugly. Again, you know, to me, the finial was kind of nice 20 something years ago. And today it's like, I can do better than that. So the wife kind of bugged me. So here it is, redone. So it's a skinnier finial, kind of a little more shape to it. I didn't change the actual box at all because it was halfway nice. So yeah, again, things I've done the last month. Go ahead, next slide. So this is a bowl that I made for a young lady up at the St. Joseph's University Arboretum when she offered up the bowl. Again, that's about 5-6 weeks ago. We sent out a couple of emails saying that the wood was available. There is still some of this. There were 2 large trees, about 30 inches in diameter, that was up at the university that they had to take down. The heartwood is dark, as you can see on the front of this picture, and it's only about half the tree. And then the sapwood is also quite large. So really pretty tree or pretty wood. So there is still some available. If anybody is interested in getting a point of contact and be able to go pick up some, send me an email. I'm Eric at Woodturners.org. And be more than happy to send you her contact information, and you can schedule a time to go up and pick it up. Only because the tree or the logs are inside the arboretum and the gate is locked. So
Eric, what is this again?
Evodia. It's also called Korean BB tree because it flowers in late July. And as a result, since there are very few trees that flower in July, late July, the bees and other, bugs anyway, really like it.
Yeah, I got some of this wood. I've turned 2 bowls from it. There's more available.
Eric?
Yeah. Oh yeah, a whole bunch of it.
It's St. Joseph's.
Yes.
Eric?
Turning wet is kind of really dulls tools quickly, a lot of silica in the wood. But interestingly enough, it dries very quick. I was expecting this to be 4, 5, 6 months to dry, and it was about 2 months. And it's about an 11-inch diameter bowl. So I had roughed it out, wrapped it in newspaper, and taped it up and threw it on a shelf. And she said she didn't want a salad bowl, which I offered her on behalf of the chapter. She had already had one, so I made a decorative bowl. So I was really surprised when I picked it up, and it was like, 1/10 the weight. So I checked it and it was down to 14%. So I turned it. Yes, sir. Tomato
Okay,
question.
The Australian oak that you call she oak, is there a reason why they call the oak she oak?
You want the humorous or you want the actual answer?
Well, both.
I have several friends.
Let's not do the humorous, Eric.
All right. She oak, Sheba bloke. But the non-humorous is that the British settled the majority of Australia. Believe it or not, it's actually an evergreen tree, although it's not a pine tree. And when they cut them down, the wide rays reminded the Brits of their white oak that they have over there. So they called it oak. And then somebody came along and said, no, 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 it's not an oak. Nothing to do with an oak. It's an evergreen tree. So stick it in your ear. And then somebody said, well, we'll call it she oaks.
Okay.
And there's a whole family of them. And majority of them are like within the top 20 or 30 of the hardest woods in the world.
By the way, do you know the reason Australia was settled by the British?
I don't know about that, but the majority of their prisoners, etc., got dumped in Australia. So
Absolutely. It came about as a result of the United States winning independence from Great Britain.
All right, let's move on.
Dawn, yeah,
Tim?
let's stay on topic, okay, guys?
Yeah, we'll get into a side discussion. We don't need it tonight. Okay, Tim,
Okay,
let me get you here.
there we go. This is a Beads of Courage box that I did. The Chesapeake Woodturners is having this Beads of Courage challenge. So this is my entry for that for next month. You can go to the second slide, which is the top.
Very nice. How many boxes do you think you guys are going to collect?
That is a good question. One of those, you never know what's going to come in on a president's challenge.
Well, that's true. That's true. All right, Scott.
Let me get the mic unmuted here. Here we go. So this is a piece of maple burl, and I threw it in a mold and I poured in a bunch of epoxy resin. And the resin here was a little bit different for me than my usual. I usually use Alumilite Clear Slow, and that's a urethane resin, but this is epoxy. And this is made by the same company, you know, the parent company, Alumilite Corporation, right? But it's, they call it Amazing Deep Pour. And the property of this is it's supposed to be able to set up without a pressure pot and no bubbles. And I don't know, I think it kind of speaks for itself, right? I mean, it turned out really nice. That did not go in the pressure pot. That just sat out on the bench until it cured. About like, you know, maybe a week or week and a half. And the resin is colored with some black dye, and it has some, I don't know, is there another shot of that, Tom, or just a one? Yeah, it doesn't really come up that great in the pictures, but there's some pearl mica mixed in with the black, so it kind of has these swirls of white inside the black, kind of looks like a marble effect. So I don't know, I thought it turned out pretty nice. And it's yeah, I'm sorry.
It did.
Yeah, thank you. And
what is the epoxy again?
The epoxy that I used for this was, it's made by Alumilite Corporation, but it's called Amazing Deep Pour.
Thank you.
All right, and then the finish on this was a little bit unusual, something I've been playing around with. It's just sand, you know, the whole thing got sanded at 120, and I covered the entire thing with some thin CA glue, and then sanded it back again, and then put on a second coat, and then light sanded that down to 600, and then I wound up buffing the whole thing with the Beal buffing system. So I don't know. I like I said, I think it came out okay.
Yeah, it did.
You know, didn't have to wait around a long time for the, you know, the finish to dry, right? So.
Oops. All right, that didn't work. Why don't we have? We're supposed to have. I think that's it then. Okay. I didn't think it would be that quick. All right. Let me see. Okay. Delaware State Fair. We'll go for share. And let's bring this up. Why is it not sharing? There we are. Okay, we haven't had a meeting since the state fair that we were doing show and tell. So I went ahead and put a quick slideshow together for us this evening, just to run down everything. As I mentioned, I think briefly in one of the meetings, we didn't have our normal out in the center of the room standalone display table. So they put us in the middle of the table, and you'll get to see kind of where we were. But anyway, we had a nice display, got a lot of compliments, particularly from the folks that man it. Here are some quick pictures of some of our ribbon winners. We've got Dave Beeler. I guess that's a flower display, and Dave turns the bottom on it. Eric put together a burl clock that won a blue ribbon. Scott put together one of his, I guess, branch and resin.
Yep. Sorry, I was on mute again. That's dogwood branches and resin.
Yeah. I put together a rush stool. Basically turned the wood. It was, I'm not sure whether it was sapele or mahogany or what it was, but turned out pretty well. Eric, I believe this was your burl, is that correct? Not sure, but this was a platter I did. Just a quick background on this.
I'm back. Sorry,
Oh.
I had it on mute. I gave you a nice speech.
Yeah.
All right. So what I started to say was I made the clock first. And in turn, there was a knob left of the burl, and it was like kind of pretty. So I went and turned a bowl. So the bowl actually made for the fair got adopted by the wife. And this one ended up being. So.
Gotcha. Interestingly enough, when we had the challenge to make platters, I made the platter based on Theo's demonstration, and Theo turned a recess in the bottom, and then he did a lot of measuring, so he didn't go through the bottom. Well, guess what? I didn't measure right. I had an English ruler or something, but I went right through the bottom. And so thanks to Scott and to Heather, I got a short lesson in how to handle resin. And this is that deep pour resin that Scott was talking about. My first attempt, I found out that if you don't seal the inside of it, bubbles come out of the straws of the wood. So I had to turn all the middle out and do it again. And so it actually ended up being a pretty good process with the deep pour resin, because like Scott says, you just pour it and let it sit, and the bubbles basically disappear on their own. And Eric, this was your puzzle?
So the wife designed the puzzle. I made it. The outer purple heart rim and base is turned, and the rest of the pieces were jigsawed, scroll sawed in some cases. So anyway, sacrifice to their trash dump.
This was a bowl I've done in the past. I just had never entered it in, got a third place ribbon. This was basically Scott's burl that he turned, and it got the judges award and the grand superintendent's award or something, or I'm not, yeah, superintendent award. So it was a nice job, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you got your check, I hope.
Yes, I did. I got it. I got it.
Okay.
That's a, if anybody's interested, that's a red mallee burl that I made that from.
Good. And just to give you an idea of what we did the middle weekend of the fair, we went down and turned tops for the kids, and this is just one of the many groups that went by and colored their tops and played with them, and that was probably the highlight of the whole fair, was watching the kids. Okay, so all right. Okay, so it looks like we're into demonstration, and it's about 7:45, and I've got quite a bit of information to go through here. So I am going to jump right into this. I am by no means an expert on dust collection, so I'm going to hit this at about 25,000 feet, so don't expect any earth-shaking details, but what I'm hoping is that what you'll get out of it is, you know, some ideas for solutions if you have concerns over dust, or you maybe want to do something about the dust in your shop. Hopefully this will give you some ideas. I'll have some presentation, and then I have some videos that are in part of the presentation just to kind of give you some perspectives from different people. There's certainly more videos on YouTube than you can ever begin to address on dust collection. What I found in my research was that you have to really be careful about what you're watching and what they're doing, because in principle, they seem to be talking about what you need to do, but in reality, some of it is not a very good solution. So with that, I'll kind of jump into this, and we'll get to talking about dust collection. So are you breathing dust unnecessarily? And the answer is you can fix the problem. And why should you worry about it? Well, traditionally, most people think of and deal with what they see, and that's the chips on the floor and the dust on the floor, and sometimes the dust that they see floating around the room. But I found a gentleman, and I've spelled his name wrong. It's actually P-E-N-T-Z, prefers to refer to it as fine dust, meaning both fine dust that you can't see and the chips and dust that you can see. And fine dust is really where the problem begins to manifest itself. These dust particles can be from 1/10 of a micron to 100 microns in size, and pretty much they're invisible. And that's wherein lies the problem. You know, it can stay in the air, airborne, for just hours. So, you know, it may look like the room is clear of dust, but in fact, there's dust floating around in the air, and it's so fine that it can't be it can't be filtered by the body. It gets trapped in the lungs. Now, one thing they were talking about is that when they opened up one of the tombs in Egypt, they found wood dust in the tomb, and they couldn't believe that there was wood dust there. Well, what had happened was that wood is comprised of a number of different things. One of those things is the silicates, and the silicates never go away. And these silicates are sharp and they get embedded, and they can cause, you know, a lot of bad things to happen. You know, COPD, cancer. There's just lots of things that can happen because of prolonged exposure. So one of the things that I found out is that OSHA, if they go in a commercial location and they start looking for particulates in the air, they're saying that there can be no more than 5 milligrams of 10 micron or smaller particles per cubic meter in the air over 8 hours. So if you go into a lot of these shops, what you'll find out is the air is pretty clean. Now, how does that equate to a garage workshop? Well, Sandor, not Solinsky, said that, you know, in a garage-sized shop, that translates into 150 milligrams, which is basically 1/8 of a teaspoon of dust in the air for every 10 hours of shop time is too much exposure. So, you know, you gotta get your air clean to make it worth you being in there for long times. So what are we doing? So I sent out a little survey just to see what folks that, you know, are in the chapter are doing, and it's certainly not comprehensive. And we're going to show you some of the results during this presentation.
Hey, Tom, one item of interest was I read an article which got me interested in dust collection or getting rid of dust. Was that in the early 1900s, woodworkers, when they passed away, had between 3 to 5 pounds of dust in their lungs, wood dust.
That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. So I asked everybody to kind of respond, and there were 71 replies to this particular question: is what type of dust collection are you using? And as it turns out, there were a lot more cyclones than I expected. 43% of the folks were using a single stage in some form. We had modified single stage, which were the ones that had probably been turned into a 2-stage, but were using the equipment from a single stage dust collector. And as you can see, then we had 25 folks that were just using shop vacs. 4 folks weren't using any dust collection. The 2 others were using something homemade. You know, they actually performed the same as a single stage, but they were homemade. So I went into looking into why shop vacs, and obviously they're the lowest cost choice. Most beginning woodworkers choose that because they don't really understand, you know, what constitutes good dust collection. But you know, they also see where, you know, it sucks up the chips and the dust very, very aggressively. And this is principally because of the high velocity of the air. But the problem is that it's also a low volume of air. And it works for chips and visible dust, but it's not very efficient for airborne dust. It's, you know, it's best if you're using it with smaller power tools or for sweeping. A lot of the small power tools will allow you to connect a shop vac directly to them. That's very efficient because it's right at the source of the dust. And as long as it's pulling that dust directly into the vacuum, it serves its purpose. So the other question I had was, does your shop vac have a HEPA filter? There were only 47 replies on this, so I guess there's only 47 folks using these things, but 24 of them said no, 16 said yes, and 7 weren't sure. Well, the reason that I asked is that HEPA filters are available for shop vacs, and you have to understand that the shop vac, when it pulls in the air to bring in the dust, drops it in the canister, and then the air is filtered and blown out into the room. The stronger your filter is, the more chance it will have of trapping, you know, micron size particles. Well, you know, they sell different qualities of these filters, and the best of them are HEPA filters, and they are available for most brands. And that's the one thing that I always use is a HEPA filter in my shop vac. Also, I use and recommend that you use a fine dust bag. Generally, they're rated for drywall, cement, or ash. That's about as fine as you can get. And I use a shop bag as well as the HEPA filter. So I use both of those to keep the dust and the airborne dust that I have been able to capture from blowing back out into the room. Shop vac says on its website that if you have a HEPA filter, you don't really need the bag, but I have always found the bag to be beneficial. The other thing is that when you're emptying those things, if you don't have a bag in there, you have to turn them over and dump them into a plastic bag, and you're just spreading dust again. And the bags themselves, you know, keep that from happening. Now, I know the bags are fairly expensive, and what I've typically done is I'll cut the end off of it, put them in a black plastic bag, shake them until they've released all the dust in there, and then I pull the bag back out, fold it over, tape it up, and put it back in the machine. And I've had great success. I can use them about 3 times without any degradation in the bag collecting the dust and chips. There's also some separators that you can buy now for shop vacs, but they need to be dedicated to wood dust because, you know, if you're using it as general vacuum, you know, you have the chance of picking up metals and other things that might not be safe. If they get in there and they're hot, they could start a fire. So if you're dedicating your shop vac to wood dust, then these are a couple of examples of the cyclone separators. You can also make your own dust separator. You can use a trash can and use the Rockler lid, or the Woodcraft sells a lid that you know, allows you to connect your dust collection hose to the trash can first, and then into your shop vac, or even into your dust collector. But in this case, we're talking about the shop vacs. And one of the things that I ran across was something called the Thane baffle. And the idea behind this is that the gentleman that came up with this idea was having trouble with the vacuum sucking the dust right through the can, so that, you know, instead of all the heavy particles dropping out and just the dust going through, he was pulling the heavy particles right along with it. So he developed this baffle to prevent that from happening. Now, when you get into the dust collectors themselves, you've got single stage and two stage. And the idea is that you have a high volume of air at low velocity. Now, you know, what we find out is when you go out to buy it and you're looking at your first dust collector, one of the things they'll tell you is it moves 1200 CFM or it moves 600 CFM. And, you know, that's a proud selling point. Well, the trouble is that virtually none of them draw the level of CFM that they advertise. I read several articles, and basically what I got out of it is that nobody knows exactly how they calculated it. But when you actually put hoses on the collector and you start measuring the airflow, none of them perform to the level they advertise. The single stage usually come with filter bags or cartridges. They're capable of capturing fine dust, and they can be connected to multiple shop tools. And they range in price from fairly inexpensive to very expensive, depending on, you know, how large a collector you want to buy. Obviously, the single stage are more cost effective in terms of price for a small shop than a cyclone or two stage type collector. This is just a quick diagram of the differences in the dust collectors. The first two obviously are single stage, and then the bottom one is the two stage cyclone. These are a couple of examples. I think most of us have seen these collectors. I think it's important to note that, you know, there's a lot of them that are using the bag type filter. The Powermatic and the jets in particular use the cartridges. The problem is that all dust is moved through the impeller on a single stage and into the bag or the cartridge. The filter dust, you know, they can filter dust from 1/10 of a micron up to 30 microns. However, the bags are less efficient. Bag filters normally get down to about 5 microns and can be as high as 30 microns. The airflow ratings I've talked about. I won't repeat that. The only important number in terms of the CFM should be what you get at the end of the hose or the duct or whatever you're drawing your dust through. Bill Pence says that best case scenario is at least 1,000 CFM at the tool, and it should be able to pull airborne dust from 15 to 25 inches around that hose or collector. And the reason that he says that is that he developed some very serious health problems from repeated exposure to dust over the years. And so when he put together his recommendations and his research, he was looking for the absolute best case scenario. And so his studies indicated that you need to look for those kinds of numbers, particularly if you have any sensitivity or you're exposed to dust for a long period of time. I mentioned the limitations on the dust bags. Fine dust bags should be shaken to dislodge dust periodically. I don't know how many people do that, but it should be done on some basis. The bags can be removed and vacuumed, but you never want to wash dust collection bags. The reason is because there is sizing on the bags that's designed to create pores small enough to capture the very small particles. And if you wash that sizing off the bags, then they no longer capture that dust appropriately. The other thing that influences these bags is that in order to get the kind of airflow that the manufacturer's trying to achieve, they sometimes weaken the bags. So in a sense that they make the holes bigger so that more air will flow through the bag. And that way they get the CFM that they want. But at the same time, they're pumping fine dust back out into the room. So dust collection bags are considered a weak choice because they really don't get down to the finest dust. The pleated cartridges are a lot better for fine dust because they can be rated as high as MERV 15, meaning they can filter down to 0.3 to a 1 micron particle size, which means you're getting an awful lot of fine dust collection. In terms of bang for your buck, you're getting a lot healthier air out of that cartridge than you would be out of your bag. If you're using a bag filter, it's certainly worth considering that you modify your dust collector to accept a cartridge filter. And I'm going to show a little clip.
Thousands of small shop woodworkers and even some professionals use single-stage dust collectors like this one, and they do a decent job of reducing the mess from sawdust and wood chips. But if you've used one prolonged, you know why some people call them chip collectors, but dust pumps. If you had access to a good quality air meter, you would likely find that the air coming out of your dust collector is as polluted with fine dust as the air surrounding your tool, maybe even worse. It's because these single-stage collectors come with poor filtration, and they often develop leaks all over the place. Leaks that can pump out fine dust right around head level, where it's most convenient for you to breathe it in. Then when the collection bag gets full and you must empty it, you fill the air and your lungs with even more fine dust. These are big problems, but they can be greatly reduced with some DIY upgrades, and that's what we'll do today. I'll take this bargain price dust collector from Harbor Freight and greatly improve its performance, both at collecting dust and keeping it inside. First, let's talk filters. Dust collection is all about airflow. The more air the system can pull in, the better it can collect your chips. But in order to pull a lot of air into the system, it must also expel an equal amount of air out through the filters. That is a major bottleneck in these types of systems. Think of the surface of the filter bag as covered in millions of tiny pores that allow the clean air to escape. You can only fit so many pores on a few square feet of cloth. So filter bag manufacturers make those pores larger, so they let more air out and increase overall suction. But that also lets more dust out as well. The single best thing you can do to your single-stage dust collector is to throw the filter bag in the trash and install a canister filter. I admit they aren't cheap, but it will totally transform your dust collector. It will move more air, it will collect more dust, and it will keep it inside. That's because the filter media in a canister filter is pleated. Instead of a few square feet of surface area for those pores, a canister filter has hundreds of square feet, not millions of pores, but billions. And when you have such an abundance of pores, you can make them very, very tiny. We're talking MERV 15 ultra-fine nanofiltration. In a few minutes, we'll talk about how to adapt a canister filter to fit your particular dust collector. But first, I want to talk about a modification I made to the collector bag below the filter. Unfortunately, these bags aren't really disposable because they have to be really heavy duty to hold up to being blasted by a stream of sawdust, and they have to be transparent so you can see when they're full. So most folks empty and reuse the stock bag many times, and that is an awful dusty chore. The alternative is to just cut the bottom off the bag so the chips can fall out without having to remove it. Of course, you don't want your chips all over the floor. So get yourself a 5-gallon pail and a Gamma Seal lid. You can find Gamma Seal lids pretty much anywhere you can buy 5-gallon pails. We don't need the screw-in part in the center, just the outer ring, because this is molded to the shape of the rim of the 5-gallon pail. Put a reasonably priced, heavy-duty 30-gallon trash bag in the 5-gallon pail, tucking most of it inside and draping a few inches over the outside. Now slip the clear bag through the center of the Gamma Seal ring and let the plastic bag drape over the 5-gallon pail, forcing the ring down over the rim and securing it with clamps. These are inexpensive 4.5-inch bar clamps. You can find them online. I'll link to them below. I've modified them by cutting little notches in the lower jaws. The notch will fit over the rib beneath the rim of the 5-gallon pail, while the upper jaws will pull the ring down on top of the pail for an airtight seal. Now watch what happens. As the chips come in, the heavy, clear plastic bag takes the abuse. That's okay, it can handle it. The less expensive trash bag begins to fill up, and the 5-gallon pail will quickly overflow. That's okay too. Let the chips pile right up, about halfway into the clear bag. Now let's empty it. Release the clamps and lift the black trash bag up and over the outside of the clear one, creating a funnel that transfers all of the dust into the black trash bag with minimal leakage. Not only is this a lot easier than filling up your clear bag and then removing the belt, taking it off and dumping it into another container for disposal, but it also means you won't have to release that band clamp at all. Those band clamps are notorious for creating little holes in the clear bag over time, which then leak dust. This way, you leave the clamp alone and your clear bag will last for many years. One thing I might add though, sometimes the belt will leak around the buckle. If this is a problem, I suggest getting some wide adhesive-backed weather stripping and sticking a layer to the steel drum beneath where the belt wraps around it for an airtight seal. Now, before we talk about adapting a cartridge filter to the top of your dust collector, I want to answer a question I know some of you will have. Why not attach a trash can separator so it will catch all the chips and you won't need to mess with the bag? You can do that, but it will take up more floor space and it will reduce your overall airflow and suction power. I recommend trying this relatively simple and inexpensive solution first, and if you wish to add a separator down the road, you still can do that. Either way, you'll need to attach a canister filter to the top of your dust collector's metal drum. The filter diameter is 17.5 inches, but unfortunately your dust collector's drum can be as small as 14 inches or as large as 24 inches. In the case of my central machinery collector, the rim is 19.25 inches across. This filter obviously won't sit on top of the rim, but this collector has a dust ramp inside and my filter may be set on that ramp. The gasket on the underside of the filter will create a seal, but I need a way to secure it in place. This pack of hardware comes with the filter, and it includes some little brackets that can be mounted to the metal drum with adhesive foam sealing strips for the outside and spring nuts for the inside. Also included are latches that draw the filter downward, securing it to the dust collector. Because there was only about an inch of space between my filter and the steel rim, the latches worked fine on my system. But what if your rim is significantly larger than the filter? Or what if you don't have a handy dust ramp inside to set your filter on? In that case, you'll need to make a donut out of plywood that fits inside the rim of your collector. Then you can drive screws through the steel drum into the edge of the donut and seal around the top with silicone. Now the brackets may be bent to 90 degrees and attached to the top of the wood donut with screws, and you may use your latches as before to secure the filter. Note how the rim of my dust collector's drum is slightly flared outward. The top of the rim is larger in diameter than the rest of the drum, so my donut was sized to fit just below the rim and slip down inside. Some dust collectors, however, feature a bead around the top of the rim, meaning the top of the rim is smaller than the inside of the drum. You obviously must size the donut to the smaller diameter so it will fit down past that beaded rim, but when you install it inside, it'll slip below the rim and it'll fit loosely in the body of the drum. I recommend attaching some thin weather stripping material to the edge of the donut to seal that gap. Then add a bead of silicone on top. This will be sure that there are no leaks once the drum is screwed in place. Finally, what if your collector's drum is significantly smaller than the filter? In that case, I would install a plywood donut inside the rim, just as before, But then I would make a second larger donut that may sit on top of the rim and anchor to the first one with screws. Don't forget to seal with silicone on the underside as well. This double donut or anchor donut setup will provide a large platform on which you can mount your larger filter with brackets and latches. Upgrading your filter and modifying how the chips are emptied are two simple upgrades that will pay off big on just about any single stage dust collector. I highly recommend you visit Win Environmental at the link below this video. They'll provide the filters and mounting hardware you need to upgrade your single stage collector. See you next time. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe.
Okay, so he mentioned Win Environmental. I have put links in the resource page for Win and all their line of dust cartridges. Also, there are some cheaper cartridges on Amazon, and there's a couple of links for videos that discuss that. However, remember, you know, you kind of get what you pay for in the dust collection business. And so, you know, investigate thoroughly before you buy something cheaper just because it is cheaper. As he mentioned, there's also plans on their website for modifying a bag type dust collector. And so, you know, just check all that out. You'll find there's enough information to do that. Finally, what I wanted to talk about is fine dust collection can be aided by a trash can or a cyclone separator. But as he mentioned, that means that it could be a detriment in the fact that it would reduce the amount of air you have going through the hose to the dust collector. So you want to make sure that you're not drawing down your airflow too much by putting in a cyclone or a a trash can. One of the things that came across in several different places is that it's always good to have your dust collector as close as possible to the source of the dust. Obviously, that would be the ideal situation. But you need to make sure that you use fixtures and the different devices to confine the dust as close to the source as possible, so that, you know, if you've got a hose hooked up to it or something like that, you'll be able to capture as much of it as you can. Okay. So the two-stage dust collectors are also referred to as cyclone dust collectors. And here's just a couple of versions. The one on the right is the Clearview cyclone, and is the one that Bill Pence worked with to design a specific type of dust cyclone. And so they advertise a Bill Pence cyclone. Of course, it runs, you know, around $4,000. So understand that, you know, the name has some attraction as well. There's also quite a bit of YouTube videos out there where people have created do-it-yourself two-stage dust collectors. This particular dust collector was done by a YouTuber by the name of DIY Tyler. He fundamentally took a Harbor Freight dust collector, broke it apart, put in a Oneida separator and a wind filter. The biggest thing about using the two-stage cyclone type dust collectors is you get larger motors with larger impellers. So you're moving more air and you can get up to the 1000 CFN at the tool. With the cyclones, and you're also getting pre-separation of the chips from the dust so that the chips aren't interfering with catching that fine dust. Also, they can be vented to the outside if you want, but they are noisier for small shops, so you have to deal with noise as well. And as I mentioned, they can be very expensive for a small shop. So the alternative might be to build your own. One of the things that it obviously comes through on these is they can't support fairly extensive ductwork. But they're not recommended for small tools except as an area dust extraction tool. They just don't hook up well to a small tool because it puts a lot of strain on the system. So I've got Tyler here kind of talking about his modification and how much it costs and such.
Hey guys, I'm Tyler and welcome back to another Learn the Logic series video, a series where I talk about something that I built and why I built it that way. Today, we're going to talk about my two-stage dust collector. So right off the get-go, what did I solve by building this system the way I did? The biggest thing is I was able to get a two-stage system in the same footprint that you would typically get a single stage system. Single stage system being one that does not have a cyclone in front of it to separate the dust before it gets to the blower, which can damage your impeller blades if you suck any big chunks of wood or nails up in there. So it's definitely awesome to have the cyclone in front of it. And then you get the added dust collection benefits of this. These cyclones can filter out roughly 99% of the dust that goes through this thing before it even gets to your blower or your filter. So it's really, really awesome to have. And it's super easy to get the dust out of here now with the new trash can system. Did any new issues arise from building this system this way? Absolutely not. A ton of people ask me how the filter works upside down. No different than if it was right side up. I cut literally miles of MDF with this system running, and MDF dust is absolutely nasty. And I had a cup of fine dust in the bottom of the bag in the end. That is a testament to the cyclone itself, and then the filter is just doing an awesome job keeping up that suction throughout all of that cutting. And in probably the year that I've had this system set up, and in about the year that I've had this system installed, I've cleaned the filter out twice. That's a testament to the incredible square footage in this wind filter. There's about 240 square feet of filter media in there compared to like the 40 that you would get with the 1 micron bags on a single stage system. And this is MER 15 rated, which is insane. That's like bacteria filtering. What did it cost to build this system? So it is not the cheapest thing in the world to build. I admit to that, but it is still cheaper than buying a ready-made system. This is a Harbor Freight single stage system converted, obviously. The Harbor Freight, if you are patient and wait for a coupon, you can get that for about $170 pre-tax. Definitely need to keep your eye out for a coupon on that one though. The Dust Deputy runs about the same. It's about $175. Again, links for this stuff in the description below. And then the filter is about $200 shipped to your door. This is not an off-the-shelf filter because of the open design, but we'll talk about this filter a little bit later. There are potentially some new options, and there is something that I would change with the filter. And then the trash can, which is $5 or $7, and then some scrap wood that I had laying around, but I would say it is all less than probably $15 of wood. So how did I go about building this system? Very simple. Butt joints, wood glue, and some screws. On the brackets that are holding the filter and the trash can lid in place, I did do half lap joints with wood glue and screws just for the added strength of all of that side grain. The lids, the trash can, which is 2 sandwich pieces of plywood, are just glued together with some brad nails shot in it real quick so that you can move on with the build. The back wall bracket is not glued together. It is simply wood on wood with some wood screws in place, just in case I need to take that down and ever remove it or modify it. Filter bag held on with a typical bracket that you get with your single stage system. There is a layer of weather stripping in between the plywood disc that I glued to the bottom of the filter. and the bag there for a nice airtight seal. Wind filter, Harbor Freight dust tube. This is just a 3/4 inch plywood, and there are little brackets that are glued to this that are inside of this donut so that you can screw from the outside through the donut into that little bracket to hold this in place, and then sealed up nice and airtight with a beaded caulk. Same thing was done on the top here, and then the brackets are bridle joints. There you can see my DIY manometer, so I know if the filter is getting clogged up. And this is actually butted together, so I use the least amount of space away from the wall. Motor mounted sideways, blowing out, and all these different adapters I have in the downloadable plans. Some important dimensions on this build. The system stands about 80 inches tall to the top of the motor here, sticks out about 45 inches this way if you remove the handle that comes standard on the Harbor Freight dust collector, and it sticks out from your wall roughly 23 inches, which is dictated by the diameter of the trash can. Would I build this system again? Absolutely, no questions asked. This thing has been super awesome to have in the shop, and it works absolutely fantastic. The only thing that I might possibly change is the type of filter that I put on here. Hey guys, I'm Tyler, and welcome back to Learn the Logic, a series where I talk about something that I built and why I did it that way. Today's a little bit different. We're going to talk about the dust collector again, but I want to tell you about a little change that I'm going to make. And this change is brought around because a lot of you guys are building this system, and Win Environmental is getting a lot of questions about how I installed this filter. So they are suggesting this filter instead that has a bigger flange on the top and will be much easier to install. So today I'm going to take you through installing that, putting a different bin on the bottom that's easier to put back on than the bag that I currently have. Of all the things about this dust collector, the bag on the bottom is the biggest pain in the neck to get back together. Once you fill up the bin and you need to clean the filter out, you got to take the bag off and get up in there and clean it out. So there's a couple things about this new filter that's been updated by Win Environmental that's a little bit easier to do, and we'll talk about. So I'm going to be taking this filter off. It's attached with screws through this very small flange that's kind of difficult to get into. This new filter is a 13F230 nano filter. It's a MERV 15 rated, and the outer protection fence on it has been beefed up so you can clean it a little bit easier. I'm going to install this in much the same way, but it's much easier to get your drill in here, and you can use less screws to actually install this filter. So a few things of note here. If you are making this hybrid dust collector from scratch, make this donut with the hole a little bit smaller, because this actually went inside the hole that I currently have, but I don't want to rip all the caulk off here and replace it. So I made a little base plate, I guess, that will adapt from piece to piece. And this is kind of nice because this is a skinnier filter. I can now shift the whole thing closer to the Cyclone, which you guys always know in my shop, I'm trying to maximize the space that I have so I can buy more tools. And this allows me to do that. Drill some 3/16 holes so I can use these screws again to mount the filter. Now that the filter is on, there's a couple things that you could do. I guess 3 different options. One, you could put a bag on it and strap it on like I did before. Kind of a big pain in the neck, and that's a big reason why I wanted to change this filter. Or you can use one of these gamma sealed lids that you can get from the home centers. But for this, you need a bucket, and that will use quite a bit of vertical space here if you wanted to ever put anything under this filter. Your third option are these 13 FP20 filter pans from Win. They have a gasket that comes with. You mount it right up here using the same FLD6 latches from Win Environmental. And that gives you a little bit more space under here if that's what you need. I am going to run through and show how to put on the gamma sealed lid right now. So you need to cut out the middle of these lids, and it's easiest to cut out some 5/8 holes, which is where your bracket is going to go to and clip on this space. So drill your 5/8 holes, and then basically you just cut the middle out. definitely be sure to have these FLG brackets kind of at the length you want them. Otherwise, it's pretty difficult to get up there and do what you need to do. They're a little bit hard to twist just holding it with your hand. And don't tighten down on them too much. Otherwise, you'll warp the outside of this and you won't be able to get the bucket on there. Or you won't be able to get the ring off anyway. This filter is obviously clean, but one of the main reasons that the outer grate on these filters was beefed up a little bit is so that you can clean it a little bit easier. You can now bang on these things without any risk of denting this outer fence to loosen up any cakes of dust that are inside there. You can hit it with some air from the outside and vacuum it from the inside, as I've shown in past videos about this dust collection system. I used to do the same thing on my old filter, and there was definitely a little bit of damage from doing that cleaning method. So this one will definitely stand up to that and tons of cleanings in the future. If you put the filter pan on there, it has the heavy duty gauge on the outside as well. This filter pan is MERV 16 rated, and you can wash this out if you need to clean out your filter pan. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different Learn the Logic than my past series videos, but I thought this would be something that you guys might be interested because I get a lot of different questions about what filter goes on this system, and I really do think that this one is easier to install because of the bigger flange on the top. So should you get this one, that is really up to you. This one's easier to clean because of the heavier outside grate. You got tons more square footage compared to original OEM filters like this that you get with your pre-made cyclones. And this one's just easier to install, whether it's on your pre-made cyclones, one with a homemade plenum, or maybe a super hybrid system like the DIY Tyler Hybrid.
Okay, so that's the DIY two-stage. I thought that was good to show because maybe some of you are interested in taking your current single stage and modifying it, or as he did, by a Harbor Freight. Next, we want to talk a little bit about room air filters, and these are a couple of 3 examples of the room air filters. A lot of shops don't have these. Certainly, one of the things we noticed that the shop at Mount Pleasant High School did not have any kind of a room air filter, and it was very noticeable in there, particularly when there was a lot of students working in wood. Air filters clean the room by pulling airborne dust through filters that can filter as much as 5 microns on the outside filter, and the inside bag filters can go down to 1 micron particles. Usually you have to set them on timers, and they need to run, from 2 to 8 hours because they have to have time to exchange the room air several times. And it even helps to have a ceiling fan or a circulating fan running at the same time just to keep the air moving. Most of the time, there are replacement filters available through manufacturers or third party, and many of the third party filters actually have higher filtering qualities than the manufacturer. So it's worth taking a moment and studying that before you just automatically replace them with the manufacturer's filter. If you're going to be generating a lot of dust, it's a good idea to turn those room air filters on and keep them on for quite a period of time after you're finished, because that way they'll have an opportunity to effectively remove that airborne dust. Now, one of the things that I was going to show you here is this gentleman did a DIY room air filter. We're running along here this evening, so I'm not going to run through this particular video, but there is a link to his video in the resources or next to the room air filters. But basically what they did was took apart a box fan they built a box that holds 3 high, well, I should say cheap air filters that would collect large particles, but not small. And then there's one MERV 10 or MERV 13 filter on the output side of the fan, so that you're taking out most of the heavy stuff. The fine stuff is caught before it's evacuated back into the room. So that's this particular clip. There is a copy of the free plans that went with that particular box, and it's on my Google Drive. So if you use that link, it will take you directly to those plans. Also, as I said, you need to be sure you use a MERV filter, MERV 10 or higher. They're typically sold in hardware stores, and they're 3M brand filters. So also asked some questions about the hose and piping, blast gates and stuff. And I got back quite a few different answers. Most everybody was using a single flex hose or multiple flex hoses, and that seemed to be what's easiest to use in most shops, because we don't know where we're going to have our tool at any given moment. There are some folks using metal ducts, some using PVC. Most all of the folks that have ducts are using blast gates, which is good. And they're using equipment connectors with that. So, they're not using something they modified or put together themselves. I am going to run this little clip. This is Chandra talking about hoses and flow. So I want you to get
More
a
than
chance.
20 years ago, I wrote Woodshop Dust Control, a book intended to help woodworkers deal with the complexities involved with designing collection systems for their small or medium-sized shops. Now, after visiting dozens and dozens of wood shops around the country that all had some kind of dust collection, I realized that woodworkers really often didn't understand how an effective collection system was meant to work. They often ended up with a ductwork system that was badly designed, connected to an underpowered collector, ultimately resulting in really poor collection performance. So why do we need to know the principles of air handling to better understand dust collection? Well, simply because air is the very medium we use to first capture sawdust and chips at the source, such as a table saw, planer, or sanding table, and then transport it through a pipe or hose to the dust collector itself. Now, moving air has 3 principal properties that are important to understand if we're going to make the best use of it in setting up our collection systems. First, air has a volume. Second, moving air has a velocity. And third, air moving through a pipe or hose is subject to friction. Now let's examine these 3 properties one at a time, and then look at how the 3 are interrelated. Don't worry, we won't be doing any math, and there won't be a pop quiz at the end of the video. Anyone who's ever blown up a balloon has no doubt that air has a volume that occupies the entire space it's allowed to fill. In the case of dust collection, that means that a large diameter hose or duct can carry more air and sawdust than a small one. This is especially important when you're trying to collect chips from a machine that generates big shavings, such as a planer, dual press, or shaper. Okay, so no surprises so far. A big diameter hose can carry a larger volume of air and sawdust than a small one. But what might surprise you is how much more it can carry. And for that, I'm going to do a little Mr. Science experiment using this 2-inch and this 4-inch fittings. And we're going to use these blue marbles to represent molecules of air or particles of sawdust, if you will. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour enough in to form a single layer across the bottom of this 2-inch fitting. There we go, that's about right. As you can see, that's not many marbles. I'm going to transfer them to this cute little Pyrex here. You can see that they basically only form a single layer across the bottom. So now then, let's get those out of there. We're going to do the same thing now with our 4-inch pipe fitting. So just one layer across the bottom of these marbles, which are all the same diameter. Okay, that's about right. So as you can see, that's a lot more marbles. And in fact, if we put them in here, you get a better idea how many more there are. And if we were to count all these, we'd find that in fact, there are about 4 times as many marbles, meaning that even though a 4-inch diameter pipe or hose is only twice the diameter of a 2-inch one, it'll carry 4 times the volume of air and chips. Pretty significant. In order to have velocity, air must be moving. And that is exactly what the fan inside a dust collector does, move air. But instead of blowing air like a regular house fan, it sucks air like a vacuum cleaner to capture sawdust and then transport it back to the collector. But because different size hoses and ducts contain different volumes of air, the air flowing through a narrow hose will naturally travel at a higher speed than through a wider hose, given that the same amount of fan pressure is applied. I can demonstrate this by blowing through these 2 tubes, which I know is the reverse of what a dust collector does. I'm blowing rather than sucking. But since I'm going to be using sawdust in this example, I don't want a mouthful of sawdust. But the principle is the same. So I'm going to spread out a small handful of sawdust here. Let's see what happens when I blow at it from about this far away from with this soda straw into. You can see that things happen pretty quickly and easily. And I'm blowing kind of medium hard. Now let's do the same thing using this wider tube. Let's see, got about the same amount of sawdust here. Same distance, same lung power. You can see obviously that since the sawdust doesn't scatter as quickly, the air is obviously moving at a slower speed than when I blow at it with the small tube. Really clear. So why do we need to concern ourselves with air velocity? Well, because if the speed of the air traveling through our ductwork is too slow, dust won't get captured properly, or worse, it can settle inside the ductwork on the way to the collector and eventually cause a clog. We can demonstrate this using a shop vacuum. Fitted with its regular 2-inch hose, it pulls in dust easily. But when we reconnect it to a 4-inch hose, air velocity slows significantly, resulting in poor collection. So at this point, you're probably thinking, why not just keep the air flowing through a dust system at a super high velocity? Well, that brings us to our 3rd principle of air handling, friction. When you feel the wind blowing against your face, you're essentially feeling the friction generated by the air molecules striking your skin. Now, when air and sawdust travel through ductwork, friction is generated as the particles hit against the inside of the duct or hose. This results in a reduction in airflow and some loss in collection performance. The longer the ductwork or the more twists and turns it takes, the greater the friction and loss of collection efficiency. I can demonstrate this using an old-fashioned manometer and a pitot tube. Manometer is basically a U-shaped tube filled with liquid that can be used to measure air pressure and velocity. I'll start by measuring the air velocity pressure in this 10-foot length of hose connected to the collector. I punch a small hole for the pitot tube, then with the collector running, insert it to take the measurement. An air pressure of 0.8 of an inch above and below the 0 mark translates to an airspeed of 5,065 feet per minute and a volume of 440 cubic feet per minute. Now let's see what happens when we add length and complexity to our ductwork setup. I'm adding 10 more feet of 4-inch hose plus 3 90-degree elbows to the original 10-foot hose connected to the dust right dust collector. Now we'll use our manometer and pitot tube to take another measurement. This time, air pressure is cut to only 1/10 of an inch, resulting in an airspeed of 2,533 feet per minute and a volume of only 220 CFM, literally half of what we started with. Length and complexity aren't the only things that result in pressure losses in a dust system. For convenience, I use flex hose in my demonstration, but the fact is that the ridges in flex hose cause a lot more friction than the smooth surfaces inside metal or plastic ductwork. That's why it's always a good idea, regardless of your system, to keep your flex hose lengths as short as possible. As mentioned earlier, narrow hoses and ducts generate more air friction per foot than wide ones do. But there are other sources of friction and pressure loss in dust systems, such as the dust ports on our machines, the fittings used to make ductwork transitions, and even the filters on the collector itself. The bottom line is that the more friction and pressure loss there is in a collection system, the harder the dust collector has to work to get the job done. If the collector's motor and fan aren't powerful enough to overcome the pressure losses, the only alternatives are to shorten the ductwork, make it less complex, or replace the dust collector with a more powerful unit. So, to sum things up, air moving through a dust collection system has volume, velocity, and is subject to friction. A larger duct can carry a greater volume of air and sawdust, but at a slower velocity than through a smaller one, and is subject to less friction and pressure loss, but also requires a greater air moving capacity, in other words, higher CFM from the dust collector. In contrast, a narrower duct carries a smaller volume of air and sawdust at a faster velocity and will capture and transport sawdust more readily than through a large duct. But it's subject to higher pressure losses, thus requiring more power, in other words, a higher static pressure rating from the dust collector.
Okay, so we've talked about that particular issue with pressure loss and the types of hoses and so forth. One of the things that you learn from that is that the dust collection hoses need smooth interior walls, and one of the sources of smooth walled hoses that I ran across was a company called Kenaflex, and I just referenced it for your information. Certainly don't know that hoses you get from Rockler and Woodcraft aren't just as efficient as smooth wall. It's just something I thought would be interesting. Obviously, the longer the run, the less efficient, and so we need to try to keep the hose runs under 10 feet. Obviously, if we're going to use hoses, we have to keep them as straight as possible. And certainly we need to use clamps designed for dust collection hoses. Simple liquid hose clamps occasionally do not work well because the ribs get in the way and leaks occur around the clamping area. Ducts can be made from metal or PVC. Again, you keep your runs as short as possible. Keep the number of fittings to a minimum necessary. In other words, keep it simple. Use sweeping curves, not 90-degree curves. Bill Pence has some pages where he talks about how the curves should sweep, and gives you some examples. Obviously, blast gates are essential when connecting multiple tools. Let's see. Okay. Obviously, dust collection duct systems are a subject in and of themselves. So I recommend that if you don't have a copy of the Woodshop dust control book from Shandor, you might check with Amazon. They're available. And also online, you can see BillPence.com woodworking, and he talks about all of this stuff in great detail. It's a very informative website. I did reference a video called 11 Common Mistakes. It's worth watching. It talks about, having problems with duct systems and what those problems can be. Also, I added a list of different videos here for your information. There's a very good one done by Mike's Workshop talking about grounding. Obviously, materials moving through metal and plastic do generate static electricity, and he did a very good job of showing you how to take care of that. Another good quick video from the DIY Wood Guy on dust collecting talks a little bit about the types of PVC piping you can use to make a good duct system. Okay, we're running tight here, so bear with me. Personal protection. Paper masks are cheap and are readily available from most hardware stores. Obviously, we all know and use paper masks. The thing that we want to be careful of is that if you look at the mask on the left, it is a cheap paper mask, and what it says is used for typical house dust. And you see people wearing these in a wood shop. They're really not getting very good dust protection from that type of mask, because it's not designed to filter down to the micron levels that we want to achieve. The dust on the right is a no-ish mask made by 3M, and it's an N95 mask. Many of us use these. These are the best. If you're going to wear a face mask, these are the best you can get. Cloth masks are the ones that are reusable. They're a good alternative to the paper masks. They can filter as low as 1 micron. They usually are washable, or they use replaceable filter media such as charcoal. Here's a couple of examples. The 3M RZ mask is available, I believe, at Home Depot. It might also be available at Lowe's. There's also the Dust Be Gone washable mask. It's not exactly cloth. It's a matrix. I'm not sure of the material, but it is capable of filtering down to 3 microns. Respirator masks are available for dust, chemicals, and paints. They come with detachable cartridges rated for specific uses. You do need to be sure and replace those cartridges at recommended intervals, because they do either get clogged up, or the media in it absorbs too many of the chemicals and obviously don't work as effectively. And the inside of the masks and such should be wiped clean after extended wear, because moisture and bacteria and things can build up inside the mask, so you need to keep them clean inside and out. These are a couple of the examples. Big box stores carry them. A lot of the agricultural supply places like Tractor Supply will carry them as well. The integrated filters in face shields come with either powered or the respirator style. With the cartridges, the advantage is having your face shield and dust filtration together. The main thing that you need to worry about when you look at for these is that the face shield is rated for the ANSI Z87. I'm sorry, that should be Z87 plus. I mistyped that. But they should be rated to handle the kind of impacts that we can expect. The personal air purifying respirators are the most expensive. Most are in excess of $1,000. They meet the NOAA and the OSHA standards for many hazardous environments. They can filter dust down to 1 micron and lower. There are a limited number of vendors that provide this equipment. And examples here are the 3M VersaFlow. Wood Turning Wonders sells the SR 500 570 air purifying respirator. Heather uses that particular model. They do a very good job. Obviously, they have replaceable cartridges. You can also make a version yourself using a 3M AirMate air supply, typically available on eBay. You can use a 3M VersaFlow face shield and a 3M VersaFlow air supply tube. Can cost around $600 and below, depending on, you know, where you at the time you get them, where they're priced. They're not OSHA approved, but all the components are. So in theory, if you put all the approved components together, you should have a satisfactory setup. Here's basically what it looks like. That's what I use. I've had no difficulty with it. It does a great job. The filters are still available. The only thing that you need to be worried is that when you buy this, you need to make sure you buy the battery charger as well, because they're a little harder to find. So the resources that I put on here basically giving you a lot of the information that I went through, certainly not all of it. Like I say, there's a ton of information out there, but it's worthwhile to spend some time studying it and getting familiar with it. It was certainly more than I had ever dreamed that. I thought I had a pretty good handle on it, but obviously when I look at my own shop, I've got some areas that I need to work on quite a bit. Again, these are just references, and hopefully you will find them valuable. And that is it. Do I have any questions?
You did not speak or refer to what I call the ratchet handles in some of the canisters that help clean them. I find that to be a really helpful thing because you just ratchet it back and forth and the filter's clean.
Yes, I did not, and I have looked at a couple of different sources on that. One of them was a video. There's 2 schools of thought on it. One is that it's valuable to be able to knock the dust out of it without having to take it apart. The other school of thought is that banging on the inside of those pleats over a period of time could have a damaging effect on their ability to capture fine dust. And so several of the folks say bang on the outside and then, use compressed air to blow the fine dust into the center. As you noticed in one of the videos, he said, there's a stronger cage on it so I can bang on it. So I didn't address it, but that's kind of there's two schools.
Hey, Tom, I have a big Onoya system with 4-inch metal duct, and it's all metal. But what I did was I put a Y where it goes into, it can either go into the filter, or I could close a brass gate and open another gate. And I ran a metal line right through one of my casement windows in my basement, and I blow everything outside. And I was talking to Anita about this, and they said, by doing that, you increase your CFM. Cool.
Yeah, you do. As long as you don't create, any constriction on the airflow. Obviously, a cartridge or a bag, restricts the airflow. It'll slow down your CFM at the tool. But if you don't have that and it's just blowing straight outside, yes, you're going to increase your CFM at the tool with no problem.
Yeah, well, it's something you could do in the summertime. And then on the end of my garage, I have another casement window, which I leave open, which I have a screen on it. So all the air that's being blown out coming back in from the outside, it just sweeps through the shop.
Yeah. Kind of defeating the purpose.
Well, it's at least the air. Well, you got to have to replace the air someplace,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that. That's all.
Good. Another question? Okay. Eric, I think I'm going to forego showing your setup this time. We'll get it maybe next time when you do the tools.
Not a problem.
And Dave, appreciate yours. Maybe we can catch yours next time.
I just have to ask Eric a question. Eric, do you have the Oneida system with the cyclone and all?
No, I have a jet.
Okay. Do you use
But it's
anything
got the cartridge filter above and the bag below.
Well, do you use anything like you were showing there with the jet where you have that square box on the ceiling? And you can turn that on and filter. Do you have any of that extra filtering?
Yeah, I have a ceiling fan filter, the Grizzly, and then I've got a jet and a Delta out in the big shop when I'm turning a large item and sanding it.
Okay.
I'm worried about the filter collecting all the dust.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And I have a do-it-yourself, yeah, and a NIDA pre-filter that pulls out the chips and the dust and puts it in a 55-gallon drum.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, the other thing I would mention is I have the Peak, I think it's called, power cap, which I really like. And a lot of guys have used both the Trent and that one, like that one better. It's not nearly as heavy. I really like that. Just, it's light, it's batteries right on it, and it works well.
Jim, would you mind sending me a link to that? I will put it in our presentation for reference.
Okay, yeah.
What was that? What was that called, Jim?
It's made by a company called Peak. I think it's out of England, Peke. It's their power cap. I think it has the initial in front of it. I don't remember. I'll dig it up. I bought it through a show one time. It might have been the Mid-Atlantic one up in,
They were at the Mid-Atlantic show, yes.
That's where I met them and tried it out, and I actually got a show special from them. So.
Yeah.
Was that any? Is it related to the trend with the helmet and the mask and all?
It's a competitor, and the guys that have both kinds, I have another friend who has both of them, and he says, I don't like the trend compared to that one just because of the weight. So.
Oh, the weight. Okay, I have the trend.
That was my problem. I had a trend for quite a while, and as I aged, it got to a point where after an hour or two, I couldn't hold my head up anymore. And so I changed over to the split system with a separate filter, and obviously holding the filter and the fan and the batteries on your back is a lot easier than, but I will tell you one thing that I never dreamed of, and don't put that thing on and walk out to the shop after dinner, because if you eat beans, you will smell them for a while. So, but I can live with that. Any other? Okay, well, thank you so much, Joe. Or wait a minute, I gotta mention next meeting is the 6th, and it'll be Carroll Hall doing pyrography. And it will be virtual, so we'll send out the Zoom information to you when the time comes. Okay, Joe, anything else?
Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to put together that presentation. It was a lot of information in there, and we will get that up on the website. So, if anyone wants to access it and review it, right?
Yep.
So I'll just quickly, since we're long on time here, I'm just going to quickly share my screen for the 50/50 raffle. We have, looks like 8 people, so $40 is the pot. Well, half that, $20 for the 50/50, and I did get a couple of people registered for the 50/50, but they weren't able to pay for some reason. So if catch up with me offline if you're having, or with me or Tom or even Scott, our treasurer, if you're having any difficulties with PayPal, let us know. We can fix that, try to fix that. And here we go for the 50/50. And it's Pat. It's Pat, right?
Yes.
Yep, it is. Thank you. And I just wanted to mention quickly, I've done tree work off and on for 40 years. I have a lot of saws. If people need help in collecting wood from logs, transporting it, I have a dump trailer, things like that. So
great.
Oh, that
problem
is
is,
good to know.
Problem is I'm heading to LA to take care of a grandchild, and I won't be back till mid-November. So make a list, and the next time I see you, we'll figure it out.
Oh, well, that sounds like fun though. Safe travels.
Yep. All right. Well, I think it's been a good evening, and I appreciate everybody attending, and look forward to seeing you next month. Everybody stay safe, and happy turning.